So, I'm just Stephane. I come from Belgium. I live in the world, in the country of the beers. Sorry. No, I think tomorrow there will be the social event, and I think I'm going to discover a lot of beers. So, just that. I'm a member of the PSF, a member of Your Python Society, a former member of FPI. FPI is just Association Francophone of Python, just for France. I just created the Python FOSDEM event in Belgium, 800 people. You can go there, so there's room for Python, maybe with the same size. About the schedule. Oh yeah. I'm going to show you about PsychoPG2, Alembic, PostgreSQL, Peewee, Multicurn, PL-Python, and blah, 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 blah. In fact, it's just a lot of libraries that you can use with PostgreSQL if you like PostgreSQL. But we will start with Python. Firstly, it's just the programming language. The syntax is very clear, easy to use. It's just an interpreted language, but we use the bytecode. It's just a compiled language. It's a multi-platform language, of course, dynamic typing, multi-paradigm, and garbage collector, of course. For Postgres, it's an elephant. No, just kidding. Just that. About the story, it just Postgres started with Berkeley. In Berkeley, that was just the first version of Postgres was called Ingress. And when they use Ingress with an SQL engine, they just call it PostgreSQL. Just that. Okay? So, Postgres. What can we do with this one? Just is a database manager, of course. He can support SQL 2011, support a lot of data types, JSON, integer, of course, string, varchar, array. So you can use it with a lot of things. It's a transactional DDL, concurrent index, extension. In fact, the extension is very useful because you can create your extension for your project. And it's a cross-platform tool. Of course, there is a replication. With the last version of Postgres, we can use a logical replication. And I'm going to explain about the foreign data wrappers and the procedural languages. Not about triggers, full-text search, view, stable inheritance, and just these points. Okay? Foreign data wrappers and the procedural languages. But what is the foreign data wrapper? Who knows the foreign data wrapper here? Okay. Do you know that with Postgres, you can interact with SQL Server, with Twitter, with MySQL, with a lot of other sources? Do you know? No, I see that, yes. So, in fact, with the foreign data wrapper, in fact, you will create just a component to interact with a source, an external source. In this example, Postgres will come with some basic FDW, Twitter, SS, CSV, and XML. Of course, you can interact with your file system and with the process of your computer. Okay? For the procedural languages, do you use the procedural languages of Postgres? Who? Just two. Wow. Great. Sorry. In fact, the procedural languages is just, I'm going to use my favorite language in Postgres. Okay, but why? For example, you want to execute a lot of stuff with Python. There's Python for Postgres, and you can execute a very big batch on 1 or 2 millions of rows with Python. That's great. Not outside of Postgres, inside of Postgres, with the performance and the power of Postgres. So, but with the procedural languages, we can use SQL, of course, PLPG-SQL, and C. For the safe part, we have SQL and PLPG-SQL because we don't interact with the external environment of Postgres. And with C, in fact, we can break everything. If you want to crash the database, you just use C. And of course, you can crash it with PL-Python, PLV8, and PL-Perl. Sorry. So, but before to explain for the foreign data wrapper and the procedural language, I'm going to show you there is a standard in Python for the connection to a database. It's just DB API 2.0. There is a PEP for that, if you want to read it. It's just a standardization of your connection to a database. For example, you want to use Postgres, MySQL, SQLite, you will use the same connection, the same API. So this PEP will explain the connectors for the database engine, how to use it, how to understand it, and will come with 2 new concepts. New. This PEP has just 5 or 6 years, maybe 10. So we have the connection and the cursor. For the connection, this one is just a wrapping with a wrapper around the database connection. It will handle the transaction and the state, the internal state. For example, you will execute a connection, and this one will be used just for the rollback and the commit of your transaction. Of course, you cannot use it for the SQL queries. How about the API of the connection? We have some methods: connect, close, commit, rollback, and cursor. Just that. Okay? For connect, in this example, I'm going to create a connection to a database. And in this case, it's Postgres. But I have my driver. I create the connection with some parameters, and I can execute some stuff. Okay? In the try except. There. Yes, I have a laser. Okay. Just here, you can execute your code. So you will execute your code with the cursor. Thank you. Who's that? We can. Star Wars. I'm your father. Come on. Okay. So I'm going to create the cursor just here, use it, and if there is an exception, I'm going to roll back my transaction or just commit it. Okay? And I'm going to close my connection. Just that. It's not difficult. For the cursor, I'm going to use a cursor just if I want to execute some queries. Insert, select, update, and delete. And create table, whatever. Okay? Just use that. I have an example here. When I create, just do a select on a table and I get with the fetch all function, my columns. Just that. So, the API of the cursor. You can use call proc if you want to use a procedural, a storage procedure. With call proc, just call it with the name and give the parameters. You can use execute with a query and the parameters. And you have fetch one, fetch many, or fetch all. Okay? It's not very difficult for the moment. And we have the close. For example, we have execute. We have execute, we give the query, the parameters. That's fine for the performance and the security. And of course, never use the string interpolation. So with the modulo operator, just forget that. Because we risk to have an SQL injection. So, but we can use execute from the cursor, the execute method from the cursor with some type. For example, we have some formatting. We can use a Q mark, numeric, named, format, and pi format. Usually, we prefer to use %s. Okay? In the source code, when you read the source code, you will find this example. But you can try with the symbol, with colon 1 or color code, or just % names, if you prefer. You have a lot of possibilities. Just an example. I'm going to create my connection, get my cursor, execute it, and just if there is an exception, I'm going to roll back or commit. Of course, I close the cursor and the connection. Whew. So, next, the best thing, maybe for me. PsychoPG2. You can install it just with pip install PsychoPG2. This library is just a small library, a package where you can interact with PostgreSQL. This one uses PQ. PQ in French is just the paper in the toilet that you use, huh? Sorry. Yeah. Multi-thread, thread safe, connection. There is a connection pool that is useful because sometimes do you remember with the first website in PHP? With PHP, they like to use Linux, Windows, Apache, and MySQL. And sometimes you can get a big exception. Hey, please, there is a lot of connection to the database. We have a crash. But with the connection pool, you will instantiate a pool and just execute it for your connection to the database. So it's full asynchronous. We can use the coroutines, and this library supports all the data types that we can use: JSON, hash-star, the string, array, whatever. And of course, support Python 2.5, 3.1, and PostgreSQL set.4. Sorry, this talk has 3 years. Okay? So for the cursor, we have two ways for the creation of cursor: just cursor without a name or with a name. There is a different behavior if you use with the name. With the name, the cursor will be stored in the database. It's not the case without the name. So SQL request. Sorry. Firstly, we can use execute for this example where we have the select, the insert. When we give the parameter with the person S, that's the same thing. We can use it for an update, for a create, and for a drop. Just this example. We have another one where I'm going to use cursor and execute. Just that. Okay. And no, that's just without the context manager, but you can use a context manager. Before, with this block, try, except, else, finally. With the context manager, without the block. Do you know that? Okay, that's fine. Object relational mapping. An ORM is just, in computer science, a programming technique for converting data between incompatible types, system, and object-oriented programming language. In fact, we have a lot of rows in the database, and with this ORM, you will get just a list of objects, just better, but time-consuming. In brief, we can map a business class on a SQL table, and of course, we can add some methods for. We can use the methods for the addition, modify, and delete, and search. It's just an ORM. So we have an example with Peewee. Peewee is a small ORM, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 lines of code. 3,000, sorry. Support MySQL, SQLite, Postgres, and maybe another database. And the documentation is very good. It's just an example for the connection, just Peewee Postgres database. I give the database name. And here, I'm going to create some models. With these models, I'm going to interact. So, we have a structure. I have my model, my basic model, Peewee primary key field, where I'm going to use it by inheritance. And now I will define address, street, zip code, and country, and my contact. And by inheritance, I'm going to have the ID. So, for the creation of the database, of the table, sorry, I can use the create table. Just give the list of models, and Peewee will create the tables in the database. We have the transaction. Just use transaction. You have the commit and the rollback, and of course, we can use a context manager with the transaction. For example, I'm going to create an address, a contact, and everything will be executed in one transaction. So we can read, of course, with Peewee. For that, just contact get. We have the criteria just here. We don't need to know SQL. And we can read the first name in this case. Or we can use the select. This select will be executed as select star from everything, from this table. Yeah. And of course, we have the select. We have this variable. It's just a query set, a query builder. And with this query builder, we can execute the where method, where we specify just the parameters. And in this case, I'm going to execute a select just with my name, my first name, and my email. I can execute for an update with Peewee, just contact.get, first change the value of first name and just save. Instead of update, it's more easy. It's easier. For the delete, it's just the same thing. We have the model.delete.theAction, and just with the condition, where and execute, or just get and delete instance. This one is just for a bulk. This one is just for an instance. About SQL Alchemy. It's just the master, the bazooka, if you prefer. With this one, we can kill everything. Except my wife, so. I love it. I love her, sorry. But SQL Alchemy is very useful. No, just, I don't joke. My wife is very wonderful. Yes, sure. So, SQL Alchemy is very useful. I prefer to use SQL Alchemy instead of Django ORM or Peewee, because with this one, you have a lot of dialect to discuss with Postgres, SQL Server, SQLite, MySQL, DB2 maybe? I'm not sure. So, you have a lot of stuff with this one. So, SQL Alchemy will handle the connection, of course, in an ORM. We'll abstract the connector to the SQL database, and it's an ORM, of course. So, just in this example, I'm going to create a connection to the database, the demo database, and I'm going to specify the dialect, PostgreSQL. In this case, this tool will use PsychoPG2. An example, with my mother's address, I need to define IDs, trade, zip code, country. It's the same example from the Peewee example, and just change some stuff. But this one is more verbose. But in fact, I prefer this one. Explicit is better than implicit. Welcome then Python. Creation of the table. Just use base, metadata, create all engine. The base variable comes from here. We declare the base just here. And we use the base instance just for the inheritance in the address and the contact. Okay? For the sessions, we can create a session. A session is just a big stack where you put a lot of stuff, your new object, just the updated object, etc. And with this session, it's the same thing that transaction. With the session, you can commit or just roll back. In this case, I'm going to commit it, and yes, just that. And I need to have my session where I'm going to add my contact, and the contact is just create here. You see the address, I create an address, and I create my contact, first name, etc., etc., and I give the address. I don't need to save the address before. Just specify it just here, and the session will see by recursivity. It will say, "Oh, this object is not saved. I'm going to save it for you." Does that? You don't need to save everything. For the read, we have the session. We need to use the query function and specify the model, and we can use the filter by function. Filter by, yeah, just that. And I need to get the first record from the database. If I have a collection of Stephane at Wirtel.pa in my database, I'm going to get just the first one. For the rest, I'm going to read all the contacts from the database. Okay? For the update, it's not very difficult. You have your record. You just update the attribute and save it. Add it in the session and just commit it. If there is an exception, the session will be rollbacked. The delete is the same thing. Okay? So, we have the connection to the database, how to handle it, with the update, the create, the insert, select, update, and the delete. What do you use for the migration of your database? In my case, Alembic, of course. How do you create your migration? Oh, yeah? Okay, Alembic is good. Just based on SQL Alchemy, because with this tool you can discuss with SQLite, MySQL, Postgres, etc., etc., etc. There is an environment for the migration, use a configuration file, and you have a lot of migration script. Example, I create just my project, Alembic init migrations, and I'm going to get this result. Just a migration directory with a readme, thank you, an alembic.ini, the environment, and some script, and of course the version. The version will be just a lot of script in this directory. Alembic revision. I'm going to create a new revision, it's just a new commit, where I'm going to explain how to create my new database. And with revision, I'm going to give just a name. Okay? And in my script, I'm going to explain how to create my table, my user table, with ID, creator, name, email, password, active, and confirm. And of course, I have the data type. Just here, specify the primary key and the constraint. And with this script, I just need to execute Alembic upgrade head. Alembic will read the source code, will execute it on the database, and it will store the number, the revision. You have the revision just here. It will store it in the database. If you try to upgrade again your database with Alembic, it will just say you, okay, this script, this revision is already applied in the database. You don't need to execute it again. Another revision, for example, Alembic revision. I'm going to add a new column. Just user I'm going to add the slug column in the table user, and I have the downgrade where I can drop a column from the table user, the user table, and just the slug field. Just execute Alembic upgrade. And of course, we get the revision just here. Okay? So, but sometimes you want to use your models from your project. You can use them just here. In this case, I'm going to execute the upgrade method. I'm going to get the binding to the engine. Just create a session. And from this session, I'm going to interact with the database, the current database, and just create, for example, the Wi-Fi user from my from my contact. If you want to make a migration. Okay. Of course, Alembic comes with a lot of functions: revision, upgrade, a downgrade, a current, and history. Upgrade and downgrade, you can migrate your schema with two new revision, or just downgrade to the previous one. Just that. So, yeah, I think I'm in time. No. If you want to break your database, you can use this part of the talk. Multicorn. Multicorn. It's just a library that you can use for the creation of your foreign data wrapper. So a data wrapper is just give the capability to Postgres to use an external resource. In this case, Twitter, an RSS feed, a CSV file, an XML file, your file system, Postgres, the process, sorry, and of course, Postgres. You can use Multicorn with an external database, Postgres, Oracle, or just MongoDB, or LevelDB, whatever. Or, for example, yeah, I'm going to show an example. It's a foreign data wrapper in C. Okay? In Python. Just that. In Python. Not in Python, sorry. So we have the part in C. Multicorn is just for this extension, support SQL. There's no problem with that. And allow to write your foreign data wrapper in Python. With Multicorn, we have LDAP, Gmail, IMAP, Google Search, SQL Alchemy with MySQL, SQLite, and Oracle, of course. And here I'm going to explain how to use Multicorn. Just create the extension, Multicorn. Just define, in this example, I'm going to use the foreign data wrapper for a website, for SSS. You know, when you like to see your feeds. Just define a new server. It's just a name. It's a foreign data wrapper using Multicorn, and I define the option. I'm going to use this foreign data wrapper. And now I'm going to specify a virtual foreign, an external table, this one, where I have some feeds, some columns, pub date, description, title, and link. And here I'm going to specify just the option of my foreign data wrapper. Okay? In this case, HTTP, Wirtel.be, feeds, Python, RSS.xml. And now I can execute a select from my database. I'm going to interact with an external website. Okay? You have Postgres, and you want to interact with an external source, another tool. You have microservice using Postgres, and you want to interact with another microservice. For example, you can implement just foreign data wrapper with a client for your API. Okay? Because I worked for Odoo, formerly OpenERP, I just create a foreign data wrapper for this tool, where this one just use an API, not a REST API, just an XML-RPC API. I just create this foreign data wrapper, and I inherit from foreign data wrapper, use a client, just interact with it, and I'm going to execute my query. The configuration. I define just my wrapper, multi-current odoo FDW, Odoo foreign data wrapper, define the external table, just with the fields, login and name, and I'm going to specify the options of name, port, database, username, password, etc., etc. And now I can execute just a select. And I discuss with the software from my enterprise, from the database. And I prefer to use that because we have the control, the ACL, and a lot of stuff. Okay. For PL Python. And after that, that will be enough. So we can use you can use Python, your favorite language, with Postgres. Python 2 or Python 3. For me, Python 3. Okay. If you want to use your favorite libraries in Python with Python, you can use it. You like to use requests or NumPy or Pandas or whatever, you can use them with PL Python. And of course, the learning curve is very small. In fact, there is no learning curve. But there is a problem. It's not safe. You can crash your database. How to use it? Firstly, just create the extension. Okay? PL Python U. I don't know, maybe for Unicode. Here is an example. I'm going to create a new function, str_title, and I'm going to use return s.title, is the title function of the string in Python. Okay? And now I can do that. Select str, title, hello world. But PL Python supports a lot of data types. We have the integer, the boolean, text type, SQL array, and custom type. Yes, we have for the debugging, we have some functions. PLPy, notice, debug, error, and fatal. Don't use a print, because the print will be shown just in your log. And just ask to your DBA, hey, can you read the log? Because I think there's a print somewhere, but I don't know where. Yes, of course. So, you can interact with your server. In this case, I'm going to use PSUtil. Who knows PSUtil? Good. You will love it. So, PSUtil, I'm going to interact with my system, Linux, Windows, macOS, and I'm going to interact with it. I would like to have the status of one process. And this process is I'm going to use the PID, the process ID, and I'm going to return just a small list where I'm going to get the PID and the percentage of the CPU and percentage for the memory. And I can use my library, my PSUtil library, just here. And now, for example, if you use pgstat_activity, it's a small table where you can see the activity of Postgres. And for example, I have a PID, this one. I am a select, just there. I would like to get the memory and the CPU percentage for this process, just with a select, if you want to interact with yourself, with an external source. Of course, we can use it for a lot of stuff. With the with statement, just the CTA, so existing in SQL. we have the select, we have get PID CPU mem, my new function, and I can use it and get the result here. Okay? So, yes, sometime in French, sorry. There is no sandbox. If you want to crash your service, use it. But that's really useful. Yeah, of course, you don't like to use the script, SQL script from your DBA. You can use Python for that. And of course, there is no virtual env. And you have to ask the supervisor a super user privilege. In this case, you are root with the database. But that's really useful if you have a big batch for your big collection of data. You can add some constraint, very hard constraint, or business constraint, business logic. You can use, or you just define new function in Postgres. We have seen that with this function, that one. And you can use the triggers and the external library from PyP. Redis, RMQ, setmtp, maybe we can use async.io or whatever. So, and of course you have a full access to the database. So thank you. Sorry.